welcome to this episode of Fuel Talk from Cox Automotive UK. For those of you that haven't tuned in before, Fuel Talk is a straight talking podcast. It shares valuable context around our news, expertise and business across the group. I'm James Davis, and for this episode, I'm chatting about a very special milestone for Manheim, and I'm joined by, welcoming back, Pete Bell, who's our Chief Operating Officer for Cox Automotive in Europe, and Liam Quegan, who is Managing Director of both Manheim Auction Services and NextGear Capital. So welcome back both.
Yeah, great to be here, James.
So Liam, welcome back. As I've said, we've reached a special milestone, which is our 100th anniversary for Manheim, and there certainly can't be many businesses in our sector that can say they can celebrate that fact.
Yeah, it's an incredibly proud moment for us, actually. So this business that we now know as Manheim Auction Services, and it's changed its name several times over the century, but it's 100 years old. You know, it was founded in 1921, and we've had the opportunity, as we've been realizing that we've hit this milestone, to be able to research our story. And it is a real remarkable one that talks about innovation, change, and adapting to the way that the market works. Manheim brand is actually relatively new in terms of its evolution in our history. So that came around in 1998, and when we partnered with a big US parent, part of the Cox Automotive family. But it all started with a business called Central Auction Mart, based in Leeds city centre. And way back then in 1921, and for quite a long time, that business was much more of a more general auction. It sold cars as well, but it also sold, you know, kind of traditional bric-a-brac, and also horses. And, you know, this is way back when there weren't that many cars on the road. There wasn't that much tarmac on the roads either. So it's a real traditional business back in the day. Things essentially continued along those lines for a few decades into the post-war years. And that's when the sort of concept of a wholesale market for vehicles was being established. In the mid-40s, things really started to take off when a gentleman called Eric Myers acquired the business. And he proved to be a real entrepreneur, not only within our own business, but within the industry. He went on to lead Central Auction Mart for almost 50 years. And in fact, his son and his grandson were heavily involved in the business and ran it. And actually, Nigel, his grandson, is still one of our directors in our business today. Eric Myers, he made some bold decisions. And actually, it wasn't just that he was an auctioneer. He really started to build out what remarketing became. But one of the first things he did, and this is a true point of innovation for us and a true point of innovation for the auction business in industry in the UK, was this decision to build a new dedicated vehicle auction facility in Rothwell, just outside Leeds. And that centre is still our HQ today. You have to remember that at that point in the early 60s, you know, we were still in post-war Britain. That site had been a compulsory purchase order. And actually there was seen as a big risk to move to Rothwell, which in reality now, if you visit the site, feels like a stone's throw from the city centre. But at the time felt like quite a remote location from where Central Auction Mart had originally been based. And people questioned how many customers would be prepared to travel. But then the M1 appeared, and we still got to remember that before this was built, the M1 didn't exist, but then the M1 appeared and that location really blossomed. So what Eric did was create our first dedicated motor auction across the industry in the UK. And he also began to establish a template for what we call remarketing now. He'd had the foresight to understand that he might need more land than just the land he needed for his auction. So he started to look at what complementary services he could offer, and, you know, things like refurbishment and vehicle prep and so on. And as the demand grew and more vehicles were on the road, the business developed and flourished. And that led us to a position where we actually opened our first dedicated vehicle refurbishment site in 1977, again, a first in the UK. So it's been a real story of back over 100 years, right through to the 70s, of things evolving.
So that's brilliant. Thanks, Liam. And from the perspective of you know, talk about innovation, and that's really interesting, that kind of horse to horsepower situation, which, yeah. You know, you kind of look at that as a powertrain shift, and we're facing the same thing, aren't we, with electrification now, really, from internal combustion. But Pete, from innovation being a key part, as Liam's talked about, in terms of our history, any particular points that have stuck out to you in the timeline and the research we've been doing looking back?
Yeah, I mean, the research has been really interesting, James, and I think, what stood out first and foremost is that innovation has been central to the history of our business, and as it has been in the past, it remains today and will be in the future. I mean, in terms of the examples that stand out to me, the first one was a real surprise and a kind of who knew moment. But back in the mid-60s, the business actually pioneered the use of multi-deck transporters. So, I think it's telling that something that's so ubiquitous in our sector today came about as a response to growing demand at the time, and some really smart thinking about how to make moving vehicles from vendors to buyers via the auction halls more efficient and more cost effective. And the other one has to be the development and the launch of Auction Vision in 1991, which in so many ways was the innovation that defines the future of the business and is defining the future of our business today as well.
Yeah, and that Auction Visions are really interesting. It's fascinating for me, and I guess for the audience that are tuned in today. Can you give us a bit more information on that, because it really was innovative in its time, wasn't it? And the way it was set up.
Absolutely. So Auction Vision was the idea of John Bailey, who was then the managing director of Bristol and West. So Bristol and West were another family-owned vehicle auction business, and they're actually a competitor to Eric Meyer's Central Motor Auctions business. So John was incredibly ambitious and something of a visionary in our sector. And Auction Vision was effectively the precursor to what we today now know as online auctions. And it was, again, a genuine game changer at the time for our industry. So Auction Vision as a concept effectively beamed auction just direct to customers' TV sets via satellite, with bids taken by telephone. So if you imagine, we had satellite vans outside our auction halls and teams of telesales operatives waiting by the phones to take calls from buyers who were, of course, sat in their own homes or offices. So there was a real sense of theatre in the operation. Very reminiscent, I guess, at the time of things like TV telethons, where you had lots of impeccably dressed people waiting in tiered seating and with enormous screens showing live action, waiting to take phone calls, and the phone's ringing off the hook. But I guess so Auction Vision was a real movement forward compared to those days if you had to physically be present at an auction, which had existed really since day one of the first item that was auctioned by anybody. But it wasn't just about what Auction Vision was, but it's about what it led to. So, I mean, firstly, it introduced that concept of remote buying and showed buyers and sellers a glimpse of the future. You didn't have to be physically present anymore. And technology was starting to support that very traditional auction process that had existed. And that really is a sort of foundation, and we can trace our roots back to our simulcast digital auction platform of today, back to that Auction Vision concept. But secondly, it became the reason that Manheim, and Liam mentioned the brand of Manheim coming to the UK, it was the reason we became Manheim. To cut a long story short, John knew he'd created something really special in Auction Vision, and it was so revolutionary, he actually flew out to the US with the intention of selling the concept to the big US auction groups. And what ended up happening was much bigger. In short, that he caught the attention of Manheim, which was then unknown in the UK, but was already the largest auction player in the UK. And they liked what they saw so much, they ended up forming a joint venture with John that eventually led to Manheim establishing itself in the UK via a series of mergers and acquisitions, including with Central Motor Auctions. Now, many people in the sector will know John because John went on to head up the Manheim business in the UK before becoming president for Cox Automotive International. And then he retired quite recently, leaving the business in 2018. But that's Auction Vision concept really has been something of a defining moment for us in our history.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone tuning in, we're going to share with you later on in the conversation where you can find out. We've published a timeline, so you'll be able to see some of these highlights, and there's a lot of plans for the year ahead, which, as I say, we'll come to later with Liam. But Pete, you referenced it there in terms of Cox Automotive. So just stepping away from Manheim for a moment, Manheim itself has gone on to expand far beyond physical auctions, and Liam talked about its early history, and again how it evolved from physical auctions. So in terms of Cox Automotive, how important is that within the Cox Automotive world?
Well, so I guess Manheim Auction Services has always been the kind of core of the business and continues to be so, and will continue to be so. But it's But it's really about how the business is developing now in complement to that. And Liam mentioned, even back a number of years, there was this sort of movement into how could you work with vehicles prior to or post auction, and that's something we've really developed. So Manheim Auction Services is now one of 3 Manheim businesses in the UK. So alongside Manheim Auction Services, we have Manheim Vehicle Services and also Manheim Inspection Services. Each one of those is an autonomous business, but they're very closely connected to one another. And, we talk about individually strong, better together. And that's really sums up how we see the business. It's about auction services, vehicle services, and inspection services connecting together to deliver solutions that meet the remarketing needs of our customers, whether they be a manufacturer, a fleet, or a dealer customer. But we're not just a UK-based business anymore. We're part of Cox Automotive International, which, as the name implies, means that we're in a number of territories around the world outside of the US. So the UK business has now grown into a European business. So we have a presence with the brand in continental Europe. We have auction and vehicle services activities in Spain and Portugal. And through our Manheim Express digital auctions platform, we have a growing business in Germany. So being part of Cox Automotive is really important for Manheim. I mean, firstly, Cox Automotive gives Liam and his team the expertise and the backing that allows them to meet our full potential. Being part of the world's largest automotive services organisation has been and continues to be a tremendous benefit to us. The nature of Cox Automotive as a family-owned private business and very secure financially also means that we can take a long-term view. So it allows us to think and operate in a different way. And it also means that we've been able to invest. I'm very proud of the team working on the acquisition of C. Walton Limited last year, which was a major enhancement to the Manheim Vehicle Services business, which I still lead directly. And more recently, we've also been able to invest in a business called Code Weavers. So it means that we can help our customers at every stage of the vehicle life cycle and to meet their requirements, because we have the depth and the breadth that means we can help connect the dots, either in totality or in certain parts of the supply chain. So I guess to come back to your question, our auction business is vital to us. It's not just our past, how we began, but it's also a key part of the future. But now we have an even bigger and better business. And for as long as manufacturers, fleets and dealers need to sell and buy vehicles, we'll be here to help facilitate that process and help them meet their needs day by day. How we do it may evolve, just as it has over the last century, but I think our DNA is hardwired into the business now, and innovation will continue to be a part of the way that we work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes across, that history of innovation in terms of you've both talked about it. We've scratched the surface to some degrees. We talked about more detail being involved, but those like-minded business people, those entrepreneurs that came together in the history of the business, it comes across loud and clear that innovation was certainly their watchword. And I guess coming back to you, Liam, a century is I guess a fabulous opportunity to look back, and we are doing that. We're celebrating, we're looking back at those achievements. But I know you're very keen to look forward in terms of the future, and as Pete's alluded to there, in terms of what the future looks like. So what about your views in terms of Manheim going forward?
Sure. I mean, as you say, a centenary, it only comes around once. It's a perfect time to celebrate our past and look ahead. Nostalgia is powerful. I mean, it's powerful for our own people. It's powerful as a way to learn. And I know that our teams and customers have actually had quite a good fun with just reminiscing on some of the ways that we've evolved. The industry we work in is one of those ones where people stay in it because it is a great industry. So people have long memories and they remember a lot of the things that have changed. It's been really insightful as well, though, because you learn from what you've seen. You learn from the evidence. You learn from the past. And the behaviours and the ambition and the innovation established by the 3 families that we've talked about, and we'll talk about the third in a minute in a big way, kind of the Myers family who started us off, the Bailey family, but now the family that we're also part of, which is the Cox family, and the values that the Cox Automotive brings, they stand true today. So it's really clear to me that we've always had strong values. They've evolved, but they've always been around a healthy balance of being dependable and entrepreneurial, and we want to keep moving forward in that regard. So it's also reminded me that innovation is the key, being a constant right change. It's right from the beginning, And it's really important that we challenge ourselves to develop new things for our customers. As Peter's already talked about, we are spreading our wings in different ways. We are a broader business than we were 100 years ago, and we'll continue to broaden out what we can offer to customers. We shouldn't be afraid of that. We shouldn't be afraid of the future, or the change that's inevitably going to come. We've all been through the COVID experience, a difficult experience for society and a difficult experience for many industries. That has been a huge accelerator of change. And we should, it's the old adage, you shouldn't waste a good crisis. We've got to learn from that and innovate our way out of that as well. So, look, we've got a huge opportunity as a business and as an industry to change and evolve for the good of our customers.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, Liam. And you talked about change, and the only constant is the fact there will be change, and there has been in the last 100 years. And I guess in terms of getting your crystal balls out, the final question for both of you, I'm not going to ask you to foresee what's going to happen in another 100 years, but certainly from the perspective of, it's been said that the pandemic has accelerated certain trends, and we've certainly observed that within our business and our industry. But coming to you, Liam, first, in terms of the next 5 to 10 years, what change do you see in that time frame within the Manheim world?
Yeah, in the auctions business, the main change is one that's happening right now. It's been accelerated by the COVID epidemic, and we need to continue to navigate it. And in essence, the main change is the shift towards a more digitally based auctions business and a more digitally based auctions industry. We already know that many of our customers and many of our competitors and ourselves have been heading this way. In fact, back in 2019, we stated that we expected 80% of vehicles to be traded on digital channels by 2023. And then COVID-19 came along. That immediately changed that made that prediction almost obsolete overnight. We can all remember, I'm sure, back to just May last year, where we hadn't sold a vehicle for nearly 2 months because the UK was in lockdown, and we emerged from that lockdown into a world where ourselves and other parts of our industry were entirely selling cars and vans and HGVs online. So right now, 100% of vehicles are being sold online. What do I expect to happen? Well, there's a number of things that I expect to happen, and we need to learn from the experience that we've had. We've already talked about the past teaches you things. Do I expect us to sell more cars physically in the second half of this year? Yes, I do. But exactly what form that takes and exactly the way we do it as safely as possible, is something that we're going to just have to develop and innovate into. It's one of those things. We learn from the past. We look at the way that we should develop going forward, and then we implement that for the good of our customers and for our people.
Yeah, fantastic. And coming to you then, Pete, from a wider perspective of Cox Automotive and your role looking at Europe, what's your view in terms of the 5-10 years and the trends that are coming down the track?
Well, I guess I'd kind of link James to what Liam said, and I'd sort of reflect back to the way the business has developed over the last 100 years. We always talk about change getting faster and faster, but if I think about going back to that point about the DNA of the business and the entrepreneurs who started what is today our Manheim business and Cox Automotive, it's about responding to the trends in the market. It's it's about responding to the trends, not just for the sake of it, but actually to respond to what our customers need. That's really how the businesses have developed to this point, and some of the things we talked about today. So I think it's about us being responsive to shifting consumer behaviors and how they impact our customers' businesses. For example, the migration towards new mobility, new retail models, and so forth. It's going to be about sustainability, driving efficiencies, reducing costs, accelerating days to sell, and helping our customers maximize the values of the vehicles that they're managing. Liam referenced us broadening our business. I think that will be key for us in the UK and continental Europe as we look to grow further. And that's another thing I'd call out. We want to continue to grow and build on the platform of the last 100 years. And to do that, we need really strong foundations, but we need to look at how do we digitally transform our business and how do we grow into new spaces that mean that we can meet the needs of our customers' businesses. So I think lots more development to come, lots more innovation to come, and exciting times for us as we look ahead to the next few years and hopefully another 100 very successful years for our Manheim and Cox Automotive Europe businesses.
Yeah, well, as you say, I think that one word, exciting, there's so much going on, isn't there, as you say, for the challenges of our customers, and meeting those challenges is absolutely where our strategy, aims to hit that square on. So that's great. Before I let you both go, and I appreciate your time, and Liam, just coming back to you finally, we talked about celebrations, and it would be remiss not to finish off the conversation talking about some of the activities we've got planned. So how can people keep up to date? Where can they go? What can they expect in the next 12 months?
Yeah, great final question, James. And look, I mean, we are really, really proud. We're really proud to be in our centenary year. It gives us a reason to celebrate against the backdrop of some quite challenging times for many of our people through this horrible epidemic. So we've got a load of variety of initiatives planned to celebrate as the year plays out. We've launched a webpage, my.manheim.co.uk/100. Where we'll be telling stories. There'll be a lot of interactive timelines and a series of articles and interviews, this of which is one of the first ones. And they'll be published over the course of the year. But we're also running initiatives with our customers, and there'll be promotions at our sales. And hopefully when we can reopen some of our physical workplaces, we'll also be promoting this on site as well. What we're really hopeful for is that we'll be able to bring people together later in the year as well and have a proper celebration for something that, I think many people deserve to celebrate. We've got people in our business who've been in it for 30 years. They've been a big part of this company for more than a quarter of a century. We want to recognise that commitment and that drive. We've also, and this is a huge part of our broader business, and the Cox Automotive and the Cox family in the US are huge about this, is giving back. So we want to talk about charitable endeavours. We've got a team tackling 100 kilometre, which is an app number, South Coast Challenge in September to raise money for our charity partner. And we're going to do a whole host of other things with that partner. And that partner this year is Make-A-Wish, which does phenomenal work for children who, have got challenges and need, gives them the opportunity to experience things in their life that make things better for them. So we're really, really excited to be partnering up with the Make-A-Wish Foundation as well. And what I would encourage people to do is just get involved, keep your eye on our social media platforms. We'll be putting plenty of stuff out there. And, in a particular period of our history where things have been tough for society, it's great to be able to celebrate something. And let's do that to celebrate Manheim's 100-year birthday.
Oh, fantastic. Well, certainly that's a big shout out to everyone that's tuned in. But and I thank you both for your time in sharing that both the history and the outlook for the business and Cox Automotive, which is very exciting, as you both alluded to. So, thank you both for your valuable time, as I've said, and to everyone to our audience tuned in. I hope you found this an interesting topic and valuable. And if so, please give it a thumbs up and a like. As always, if there's anything you'd like us to focus on in future Fuel Talk episodes, please just send a message through one of our social media channels. Get in touch with us. Thank you for tuning into Fuel Talk, and most importantly, stay safe.